Tonight, the White House owning up to a mistake, apologizing for not sending a high-level official to the Unity rally in France. Should President Obama have been front and center at the march with the other world leaders? Also tonight, police across New York City, they've been ordered not to take sick leave or vacation days. That's still the arrest slowdown come to a full stop. Police Commissioner Bill Bratton, he spoke out today saying there's been some progress. However, more work needs to be done. The question is, will de Blasio ever patch things up with the cops, or has the damage to this relationship met the point of no return? Plus tonight, Ohio State and Oregon meeting in the big game, making history, if you will, playing the first college championship game. Should athletes ditch the academics and just play ball? Well, that question was posed by one of the quarterbacks tonight. We'll talk about that as well. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thank you so much for joining us. This evening, we're going to start in Washington, where the White House is admitting fault for not standing with world leaders in Paris on Sunday, that following, of course, the deadly terror attacks. This is officials around the globe remain on alert amid new terror threats. It should be noted that we're going to get into that, but we're also going to get into the questions about where we go from here. But first, let's catch you up on the latest in the aftermath of Sunday's rally. A rare admission today from the White House.
And I think it's fair to say that we should have sent someone with a higher profile.
The Obama administration taking some heat for not sending a senior official to yesterday's massive unity rally in Paris. More than 1 million people taking to the streets, including more than 40 world leaders marching arm in arm. The biggest public demonstration in France in a generation. The White House says it just wasn't possible for the president to go.
Security requirements around a presidential level visit or even a vice presidential level visit are onerous and significant.
Across France, 10,000 additional soldiers deployed for enhanced security, an unprecedented show of force. But the grieving, shocked nation is trying to get back to something approaching normalcy. Staffers of Charlie Hebdo, they're on the job today working out of the building of a French newspaper. Their goal? To publish the next edition on Wednesday. And we're learning more details about the attackers. This video posted online from the gunman who killed a police officer and later 4 people at a kosher supermarket. A black jihadist flagged behind him, Ahmed Koulibaly, swearing allegiance to ISIS in Syria. French authorities, they're searching for this woman, Hayat Boumediene, Koulibaly's partner. Today, security camera footage showing Boumediene entering Turkey 5 days before the Charlie Hebdo attack. It's believed she crossed the border into Syria on January 8th. Now, the major rallies will be over, but Secretary of State John Kerry, he will be going to Paris on Thursday, that in a show of support for France. Now, as we reported, there were more than 40 world leaders at the Unity rally this past weekend. Government officials in Paris say there were between 1.2 and 1.6 million people in attendance. They say the march, the largest demonstration in the nation's history. The American media ripped into the White House after no U.S. leaders showed up. Just take a look at some of the local tabloids from our area here. This is the Daily News saying Eric Holder, top U.S. official, no shows at Paris Unity rally. The Post, of course, going a little further. U.S. officials nowhere to be seen at Palace rally. All right, let's bring in our panel. Jeannie Zaino, professor of political science at Iona College, professor of campaign management at NYU, easy for me to say. Dominic Carter, political journalist, author. Tom Doherty, Republican strategist, partner at Mercury, and a former advisor to New York Governor George Pataki. And Andrew Whitman, senior political correspondent. Andrew, I'll start with you. Was too much made of this? Was the fact that the White House, acknowledged day one, at least in the work week and the news cycle today, yeah, we screwed up? How big a mistake was it by the White House and the administration?
I mean, I think from a PR standpoint, it was something of a mistake. But in terms of actual, imagery or messaging to the world or actually advancing the cause of unity in Paris, I don't think this was a particularly big deal at all. We tend to think that, boy, if there's a world event, the U.S. has to be right in the middle of it and everything has to surround the U.S. I don't think it was that big a deal. I really don't.
I think you disagree, Tom.
Well, I mean, just to his point, is that, if the president had showed up or didn't show up, it doesn't change the circumstances. Yet when Bush plane flies over and he views Katrina from above instead of landing on the ground, it was the worst event in the history of mankind.
We're not comparing the two, right?
Well, no. Well, look, I mean,
One was on American soil with an actual disaster.
Wait a second. This is a president who ran on he was going to be the solver of all the world's problems. This was a bad
I remember that from his campaign blank, but
you don't remember the speeches in Berlin
solver of all the world's problems?
Okay, Andrew. I mean, look, you like to revise history as it fits the Obama narrative, but my narrative is I can argue both on this case. One, the president shouldn't necessarily be there. I think it'd be dangerous, quite frankly, to walk in, amongst 1 million, 2 people, et cetera. But to send John Kerry, the Secretary of State, that seemed to be a no-brainer when other world leaders are around. I just think we have a double standard when we talk about Obama, is that it was a stupid PR mistake not to send somebody there yesterday.
I'll agree with the last part of that. And also, when I was looking, it wasn't just European leaders. I mean, you had Egypt, the PLO, you can go down the line here in addition to Russia, et cetera. Again, is this a one-day news story, you think? Can we move on to something else tomorrow, or is this something that sent the wrong message?
I mean, it sent the wrong message, and the administration said that. It was a mistake. They screwed up. Whether it was an oversight, how it happened, I think is a big question. I don't think it's going to last beyond a 1-2 day news cycle, quite frankly, but it is a screw up. We should have had somebody there bigger than the ambassador to France, who, quite frankly, nobody knows. If not the president, at least Vice President Biden, Attorney General Holder, who was in Paris and apparently left before the rally, or maybe even send an emissary. President Clinton, former President Bush, somebody more notable should have been there to show our unity and support. I mean, it's that simple, and they said as much.
Dominic, I can look at it one of 2 ways in the aftermath of what happened in Paris. You look at the unity rally, where you had people, even with some own questionable backgrounds in their own host countries, about how they treat speech and human rights, et cetera. 1.5 million people showing up here. Global condemnation of what these people did. That, hey, this could be a turning point. Or at least the beginning of a turning point in global terror. But then I could do it the flip side to say, hey, it's been Ottawa in Canada, Sydney in Australia. It's not just Iraq and Afghanistan. Now you got it in Paris, which I know has not been a stranger over the years to terrorism, but still in Paris, and heightened alerts everywhere else. Is the world today safer than it was a week ago, or less safe, you think?
Wow, that is a really good question. With people that are doing these attacks on their own, I would have to say maybe it's more of a dangerous place, to answer your question directly. I love my friend Tom Doherty, but the comparison to Katrina, that's what I'm a little baffled about right now, because I really don't get that one.
Would you like me to explain it to you? Let me explain it to you. Because he raised the issue, what was going to change if the president went. My point was nothing from a standpoint of taking care of the people was going to change if that plane landed and the president used resources walking around New Orleans at that terrible time. That was my only point about the comparison. Sometimes it's the optics. President Bush should have.
Optics?
Yeah.
You have a congressman right now that's the majority whip that took part in a rally with David Duke many years ago.
No, he didn't.
Or the organization.
Get your facts straight.
My facts are correct. But wait, you're going to talk to me tonight, Tom,
you need to get your facts straight.
My facts
he
are straight.
spoke to a group of people.
Right.
We didn't say anything racist.
No, guys, we're not going to go off these rails here, all right?
No, but he's the one that mentioned optics. I can't. That's like a dirty word for you guys these days.
Why is it a dirty word?
We need a unity rally.
Yes.
We need a unity.
I have another question. It's like
you don't think they should have sent somebody from America to be there?
Of course, it was a mistake.
Media folks,
it was a mistake.
Political analysts, you've had comedians, everybody's had their own 2 cents, obviously not just condemning what happened at Charlie Hebdo, but then, and sure the signs were great, we all are Charlie, but a lot of people say, well, no way, shape, or form was the attack justified in any other way. There is a question as to whether or not there can be reckless speech that can contribute to inflame those on the lunatic edges. And some say that some of the satirical stuff promotes hate speech. And yet an op-ed columnist in the Post and the Times and many other media outlets, they've taken the position, some calling for legislation that would prohibit such work that many people say is meant to humiliate and insult. We know this has not been, this didn't come out of left field. The same offices had been firebombed before. We saw Danish cartoonists that were gunned down and killed because of perceived or real insults to Allah. So can there be a line? If we start going down that line, do we not know where it stops?
I don't think so. I'm going to look at Tom Doherty while I'm saying this. One of the things about free speech is that some of the free speech will offend you or make you crazy or that you would vehemently oppose. But of course, the thing about free speech is that person has the right to engage in that free speech, even if you object, even if it makes your blood boil. That's the whole thing about free speech.
Okay, but I'll give you two things that you have to explain to me why it's different. In Germany after World War II, it was illegal to either write, say, or promote any form of anti-Semitism or any Nazi sympathization. We have seen at different points in our history and in even our allies' history that certain things aren't acceptable. You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. Is there a line where you are promoting or inciting hatred, or do you have to say, hey, that's their problem, and I don't care what I say?
I think the line is actually fairly well defined, even in U.S. law, where if you're inciting people to violence, if you're actually encouraging them to engage in illegal behavior, I think that's where the line is. I mean, if you're actually trying to say, hey, let's form a militia and take down the government, that crosses the line. But you certainly have the right to say anything you want about the government in this country.
And anything about anyone's faith, religion, or beliefs.
Absolutely.
Well,
Absolutely.
including
Including faith or religion in general.
That's not exactly true. Go back to like Chaplinsky versus New Hampshire. You can't say something to a police officer in New Hampshire, according to that Supreme Court case, because it may potentially in the future incite something. And that was calling a police officer a pig. And granted, that's in the 1940s. But this idea that we have this unlimited right to speak is absolute nonsense. It's always been curtailed. It's up to the courts to figure out what that line is. And I agree with you. I think the line should be when it's a danger to national security. But that has not always, even in our history, been the case. And that's why you have to be so vigilant at these times.
But here's one thing. If I follow that line, can I argue that George Carlin and other humorists or comedians or anyone else who makes any joke or takes the approach that they're atheist and you know, makes fun of, either funny or in a not funny way, other people's beliefs, now cross that line? Because that could be inciting violence if anyone says something to someone who is of a extremist.
If I was on the court, I would say no. I would say they're free to say that. But it depends on who's on the court, and it depends on the circumstances of the case. So this idea that we have this kind of blanket right to say these things is absolutely not true.
Do you all agree?
Definitely.
How about you, Tom?
Thank you, Dominic.
Make sure you get your facts right now. Get your facts right.
Well, no, we need to hire a fact checker for you.
Ah, okay.
Look, it's very simple. I mean, Donahue from the Catholic League has spoken a lot about this the last few days, okay? And I think a lot of what he said was just taken out of, just misunderstood. Look, if you want to go and you want to take a crucifix and put it in a jar of urine, you're going to offend me, okay? You're going to offend Rudy Giuliani. And what we will do is we will go protest, okay? Remember who you're dealing with, though.
Or withdraw funding.
Or withdraw funding, exactly. Now Muslim extremists, the people who are on a jihad, if you go offend Muhammad, which I would never do. I mean, I take it very personally that people's religions are very personal. You run a risk, as they did with these cartoons in France, of you're lighting a match to people whose reaction won't be my reaction. They won't protest. They will seek to slaughter you and kill you. But I think that to Andrew's point is I think we cannot go down the road where we do what you said happened in Germany after World War II is once we head down that road and start limiting that speech, then I think you get into a very, very slippery slope.
I agree with you, but the danger is in these times, one or two attacks, like what happened in Paris the other day, attacks happens here for the same reason, and you can bet there's going to be calls for, which I disagree with, but for the government to restrict.
And I'll give you a perfect example for Andrew.
I don't agree with it, but I'm saying that'll be what happens.
But Donahue had the right point. Is you know, really it becomes an individual responsibility thing.
I agree with that.
And you know, people need to recognize that in these difficult times, is that maybe we need to tone it down just a little bit, okay? There are ways to make your point without offending somebody's religion. You don't need to have two nuns performing lesbian acts or the Pope wearing condoms or Muhammad doing X, Y, and Z. That's just wrong in my book. And people of common sense should say, that stuff is wrong.
Yeah, but when
instead of rushing out to go buy the cartoon magazine when they print a million copies.
The question is, and then it incites violence.
What about
what does the government do?
What if it wasn't the perceived or real a joke about Muhammad, right, that would have provoked this? What if it was just people condemning their actions? And that was enough of a provocation for them to attack a publication. Are we then going to then take the approach we can't say anything negative about somebody?
Richard, I'm saying you go down that line. Richard, people have common sense. I mean, you have common sense. Even Dominic has common sense. If you look at the cartoon, I think you can say that's over the line. I think that's all I'm saying.
It's a moving line.
People are always going to be
We'll
offended,
keep the debate going,
especially
but
about religion.
I do want to head to a break though first. When we
religion.
come back, we'll have our next topic. But first, you go over to Facebook and Twitter and answer a question tonight. Should the president have attended the Unity rally in Paris? When we come back, we will head to New York City, where the rift continues between Mayor de Blasio and the police. Who's at fault at this point with how far this thing has gone? And top police officials, they're taking action to crack down on the slowdown. Is it and will it work? We'll have more of that. But as we go to break, here's a look at our still life photo of the day out of France, with world leaders walking together in that show of solidarity in Paris. We'll be right back.